In early February 2025, a significant shift in U.S. trade policy was announced by President Donald Trump, marking a new chapter in the ongoing trade tensions between the United States and China, Canada, and Mexico. On February 2, Trump signed executive orders imposing tariffs on a wide range of imports, most notably a 10% tariff on Chinese goods and a staggering 25% tariff on imports from Canada and Mexico. However, the most impactful element of this announcement was the elimination of the de minimis exemption, a provision that had allowed packages valued at less than $800 to enter the U.S. duty-free. This change is widely regarded as a devastating blow to popular Chinese e-commerce platforms such as Temu, Shein, and Taobao, which have thrived on the ability to offer low-cost goods directly to American consumers. Background on the de minimis exemption. The de minimis exemption has been a crucial element of U.S. trade policy for decades, dating back to the 1930s. It has enabled e-commerce retailers, particularly those based in China, to ship products directly to U.S. consumers without incurring tariffs, thus allowing them to sell at significantly lower prices than traditional retail competitors. In 2024 alone, over 1.3 billion shipments were processed under this exemption, highlighting its importance for businesses that rely on low margins and quick delivery times. The growth of Chinese e-commerce companies like Temu and Shein was fueled by this loophole, allowing them to bypass traditional import duties and capture a substantial share of the U.S. retail market. For instance, Temu, owned by PDD Holdings, has become a popular shopping platform by offering steep discounts on a variety of products, and it is projected to generate $30 billion in sales to U.S. consumers in 2025. Legislative and public scrutiny. The growing reliance on the de minimis exemption by Chinese retailers has not gone unnoticed. Lawmakers have raised concerns about the safety and legality of goods entering the U.S. under this provision. Issues surrounding product safety and the potential for illicit goods, including fentanyl, to enter the country undetected have prompted increasing scrutiny. A congressional investigation into companies like Temu and Shein revealed troubling findings regarding their supply chains, including allegations of forced labor. These concerns were compounded by the realization that the de minimis route made it easier for harmful substances to evade customs checks. The tariff announcement. On February 2, 2025, Trump's executive orders effectively closed the de minimis loophole, removing the tariff-free entry for packages under $800. The tariffs are scheduled to take effect shortly after the announcement, signaling a swift shift in trade policy. The impact of this decision is expected to be felt most acutely by Chinese e-commerce companies that have built entire business models around the ability to sell goods without tariffs. Experts predict that these tariffs could lead to increased prices for U.S. consumers, as companies may be forced to pass on the additional costs associated with the tariffs. Following the announcement, both Temu and Shein began to adapt their logistics strategies. Temu started ramping up inventory in U.S. warehouses to mitigate the impact of the new tariffs, while Shein has focused on establishing distribution centers in the U.S. However, analysts warn that these changes may not fully shield these companies from the financial repercussions of the tariff changes. Broader implications. The elimination of the de minimis exemption has broader implications beyond just the affected companies. It represents a significant effort to level the playing field between American retailers and their Chinese counterparts, which have disproportionately benefited from the loophole. While American retailers have had to adhere to strict import regulations and tariffs, Chinese e-commerce companies have thrived by exploiting the de minimis provision. Furthermore, the closure of this loophole has sparked discussions about the future of U.S.-China trade relations. Some experts suggest that the crackdown on de minimis could extend beyond newly imposed tariffs and affect existing duties as well, raising questions about the long-term regulatory landscape. Conclusion. In summary, the imposition of a 10% tariff on Chinese goods and the closure of the de minimis loophole by the Trump administration represents a tectonic shift in U.S. trade policy. It poses significant challenges for Chinese e-commerce giants like Temu and Shein, which have relied heavily on this exemption to offer low-priced goods to American consumers. As these companies scramble to adapt to the new regulatory environment, American consumers may soon face higher prices for products that had previously been available at bargain rates. This transition marks a new phase in the ongoing trade debate, with implications not only for retailers on both sides but also for the broader economic relationship between the U.S. and China. The imposition of a 10% tariff on imports from China announced by President Donald Trump on February 2, 2025 marks a significant shift in U.S. trade policy, particularly affecting e-commerce firms like Temu and Shein that have thrived under the de minimis exemption. This exemption allowed packages valued at less than $800 to enter the U.S. duty-free, which has been a critical factor in the business models of these companies. Key points of impact. 1. Removal of the de minimis exemption. The closure of the de minimis loophole is expected to raise the costs associated with importing low-cost goods from China. This will particularly impact online retailers that rely on this exemption to offer competitive pricing against U.S. counterparts. Temu and Shein have built their business strategies around the ability to ship products cheaply without tariffs, which allowed them to flood the market with low-priced items. 2. Pressure on pricing. As tariffs kick in, companies like Temu and Shein may have to increase their prices to maintain profit margins. This could lead to a backlash from American consumers who have come to expect low prices. The question remains whether these consumers will be willing to pay more for goods that were previously much cheaper. 3. Logistics and supply chain adjustments. In anticipation of the tariff changes, Temu has begun modifying its logistics strategy, such as increasing inventory in U.S. warehouses. This approach aims to mitigate the impact of the tariffs but could still pressure their discount model. Shein is also taking steps to bolster its supply chain within the U.S. to adapt to the new trade environment. 4. Legislative and regulatory scrutiny. The scrutiny on the de minimis provision has intensified, with lawmakers concerned about product safety and the potential for illicit goods, including drugs like fentanyl, to enter the U.S. without adequate checks. The elimination of the exemption is seen as a necessary step to level the playing field for U.S. retailers who have to navigate existing tariffs. 5. Market dynamics. The proposed changes could also benefit established U.S. retailers like Amazon, eBay, and Etsy, which operate similar e-commerce models but may not rely as heavily on the de minimis loophole. These companies could capitalize on the potential price increases faced by Temu and Shein, drawing consumers back to more traditional retail options. 6. Consumer behavior changes. Experts suggest that higher prices may drive consumers to reconsider their purchasing habits. Those who have relied on the significantly lower prices from Temu and Shein might be forced to either pay more or seek alternatives, which could disrupt the current market dynamics that favor low-cost imports. Counterintuitive insights. Increased prices may not deter demand. Despite the anticipated price increases, some analysis suggests that consumers have shown a willingness to wait longer for lower-cost products, indicating that price sensitivity may not be as straightforward as assumed. This could mean that while prices rise, demand might not drop as dramatically as expected, particularly among lower-income consumers who rely on these goods. Potential backlash against tariffs. While the tariffs are intended to protect U.S. manufacturers and level the playing field, there may be unintended consequences, such as increased dissatisfaction among consumers who are accustomed to lower prices. This backlash could manifest in various ways, including calls for policy reform or even shifts in purchasing behavior towards more domestic products. Impact on U.S. competitors. The tariffs could inadvertently strengthen the competitive position of U.S. retailers that have been struggling to compete with the low-cost imports. If Temu and Shein face significant price increases, U.S. companies might find themselves in a better position to attract customers who are looking for reasonably priced alternatives without the long shipping times associated with overseas deliveries. Conclusion.
The removal of the de minimis exemption and the introduction of new tariffs represent a pivotal moment for U.S.-China trade relations, particularly as it pertains to e-commerce.
The changes will force companies like Temu and Shein to adapt their business models, potentially leading to higher prices for consumers. While the immediate effects are clear, the long-term implications for consumer behavior, market dynamics, and the competitive landscape remain to be seen. The situation exemplifies the complexities of trade policy and its ripple effects across the economy, highlighting that while tariffs aim to protect domestic interests, they can also create new challenges and opportunities within the marketplace. The recent announcement by President Donald Trump regarding the imposition of a 10% tariff on Chinese imports alongside the closure of the de minimis exemption for packages valued under $800 is poised to dramatically reshape the landscape of e-commerce in the United States, particularly affecting Chinese retailers like Temu and Shein. While many discussions around this topic focus on the immediate economic impacts and reactions from these companies, there are critical aspects that warrant deeper examination and are often overlooked in mainstream coverage. Key overlooked aspects and their significance. 1. Historical context of the de minimis exemption. The de minimis provision has been a fixture of U.S. trade law since the 1930s, originally designed to facilitate small shipments without burdensome customs procedures. Understanding its historical context reveals how significant this exemption has been in shaping contemporary e-commerce. The rapid increase in de minimis shipments, from 139 million in 2015 to over 1.3 billion in 2024, illustrates not only the growth of e-commerce but also changing consumer behaviors and the globalization of retail. The significance lies in how this removal could set a precedent for future trade agreements and policies. 2. Impact on consumer pricing and behavior. While many reports discuss the potential for increased prices due to tariffs, there is a broader implication regarding consumer behavior. American shoppers have become accustomed to low prices and quick shipping from platforms like Temu and Shein. The psychological impact of price increases could lead to a shift in purchasing habits, where consumers may turn back to traditional retailers or explore alternative e-commerce platforms that can navigate these tariffs more effectively. This shift could have long-lasting repercussions on market dynamics and competition. 3. Supply chain adjustments and their limitations. In response to the new tariffs, companies like Temu are increasing inventory in U.S. warehouses and developing distribution centers within the country. However, the effectiveness of these adjustments is questionable. The overhead costs associated with maintaining U.S. inventory, coupled with the tariffs, may not fully offset the price increases consumers will experience. The long-term viability of this strategy is a critical aspect that deserves more attention, especially in light of how such changes could affect their business models and market positions. 4. Legislative scrutiny and product safety concerns. The closure of the de minimis loophole has been propelled not only by economic competition but also by safety concerns. Lawmakers have expressed anxiety over the potential influx of unsafe products and the increasing facilitation of illicit goods such as fentanyl. The implications of these safety concerns extend beyond tariffs. They highlight a growing demand for stricter regulatory frameworks that could reshape how e-commerce operates. This legislative landscape could lead to further scrutiny of supply chains and compliance protocols, affecting not only Chinese retailers but also U.S. companies sourcing internationally. 5. Geopolitical ramifications. The tariffs and the closure of the de minimis exemption can also be viewed through a geopolitical lens. They may be part of a broader strategy by the U.S. to reassert its economic dominance and counter perceived threats from China. This shift in trade policy could escalate tensions and lead to retaliatory measures from China, affecting a wide range of industries beyond e-commerce. The significance of this geopolitical context cannot be understated, as it could influence future trade negotiations, alliances, and market access for U.S. businesses. 6. Long-term viability of fast fashion models.
Companies like Shein and Temu thrive on a fast fashion model characterized by low prices and rapid turnover of inventory. However, with the imposition of tariffs and the associated cost pressures, the sustainability of this business model comes into question. Consumers may find it increasingly difficult to justify purchasing low-cost, low-quality goods, especially as awareness of environmental issues and labor practices rises. This shift could lead to a re-evaluation of fast fashion's place in the market, prompting companies to adapt their practices or face significant declines. 7. Potential market disruptions and opportunities. The closure of the de minimis loophole may inadvertently create opportunities for domestic and other international retailers. Companies that can navigate these new tariffs effectively or offer competitive alternatives may find themselves in a stronger position to capture market share. The significance of this disruption lies in its potential to redefine competition in the retail sector, favoring those who can adapt quickly to the changing regulatory environment. 8. Consumer awareness and ethical consumption. As discussions around supply chains and ethical consumption gain traction, the removal of the de minimis exemption may encourage consumers to be more discerning about their purchases. Increased scrutiny of products imported under these regulations could lead to a demand for transparency and ethical sourcing, influencing how e-commerce companies market their products. This societal shift towards ethical consumption has the potential to reshape not only consumer behavior but also corporate practices across the industry. Conclusion. The closure of the de minimis loophole and the imposition of tariffs on Chinese goods mark a significant turning point in U.S. trade policy, with far-reaching implications for e-commerce, consumer behavior, and geopolitical dynamics. While immediate economic impacts are a primary focus, the broader significance of these changes, including historical context, supply chain adjustments, safety concerns, and shifts in consumer values, deserve more attention. Understanding these multifaceted dimensions will provide a clearer picture of the ongoing evolution of the retail landscape and the future of international trade. 1. Impact of the closure of the de minimis exemption on e-commerce. The closure of the de minimis exemption, which previously allowed for duty-free importation of packages valued under $800, is poised to have a profound impact on Chinese e-commerce retailers such as Temu and Shein. This change not only threatens the business models of these companies, which have thrived on low-cost goods and rapid shipping, but also signals a shift in U.S. trade policy aimed at leveling the playing field for American retailers. The implications for consumer pricing, product availability, and the overall e-commerce landscape are significant and warrant in-depth discussion. 2. Legislative concerns and product safety. The scrutiny of the de minimis provision by U.S. lawmakers reflects broader concerns regarding product safety and labor standards. The exemption has been criticized for facilitating the importation of potentially unsafe or illicit goods, including concerns over fentanyl trafficking. The discussions surrounding these issues highlight the need for a balanced approach that addresses both economic competitiveness and public safety, raising questions about how to effectively regulate e-commerce in a globalized economy. 3. Strategic responses from Chinese retailers. In response to the tariff announcement, companies like Temu and Shein are adapting their logistics and supply chain strategies. Temu's shift towards increasing inventory in U.S. warehouses and Shein's establishment of distribution centers illustrate the proactive measures these companies are taking to mitigate the impact of new tariffs. However, these adjustments may not fully offset the potential rise in costs for consumers, prompting a critical evaluation of how such business model adaptations will affect market dynamics and consumer behavior. 4. Economic and political implications of tariffs on trade relationships. The imposition of tariffs on imports from China, Canada, and Mexico reflects a broader strategy to address perceived trade imbalances and protect domestic industries. The potential for retaliatory measures from these countries raises questions about the long-term sustainability of such a trade approach. Additionally, the political ramifications of these decisions, particularly in the context of upcoming elections and shifting public sentiment about trade, provide fertile ground for discussion regarding the intersection of economic policy and political strategy.
Here are three famous historical cases that involve the imposition of tariffs or trade restrictions leading to significant impacts on economies and international relations. Similar to the recent tariff announcement affecting Chinese e-commerce firms like Temu and Shein. 1. Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act 1930. The Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act was enacted during the Great Depression in the United States. It raised tariffs on over 20,000 imported goods to protect American industry by making foreign products more expensive. However, this act led to retaliatory tariffs from other countries, which further deepened the global economic downturn. The subsequent reduction in international trade exacerbated the economic malaise, causing widespread unemployment and contributing to the global economic crisis of the 1930s. The act is often cited as an example of how protectionist trade policies can backfire, hurting the very economy they were intended to protect. 2. The trade war between the United States and China 2018-present. Beginning in 2018, the United States under President Donald Trump initiated a trade war with China by imposing tariffs on billions of dollars worth of Chinese goods. The tariffs aimed to address trade imbalances and intellectual property theft, but they sparked a series of retaliatory tariffs from China on American products. This ongoing trade conflict has affected various sectors, including agriculture, manufacturing, and technology. The tariffs led to increased costs for American consumers and businesses relying on Chinese imports, while also disrupting global supply chains. The long-term economic ramifications of this trade war continue to unfold, significantly impacting U.S.-China relations. 3. The British Navigation Acts 1651–1849. The British Navigation Acts were a series of laws that restricted colonial trade to England or English ships. These acts aimed to control colonial trade and bolstered the British economy by limiting competition from other nations. While successful in increasing British control over trade, the Navigation Acts fostered resentment among American colonists, who felt economically oppressed. This resentment contributed to the growing desire for independence, culminating in the American Revolution. The Navigation Acts serve as an example of how trade restrictions can lead to significant political and social upheaval, ultimately changing the course of history. These historical cases highlight the complexities and consequences of trade policies and tariffs, illustrating how such measures can have far-reaching effects on economies, international relations, and societal dynamics. The recent imposition of tariffs by President Donald Trump on Chinese goods, particularly the closure of the de minimis exemption, is set to have profound implications on the e-commerce landscape and consumer behavior in the United States. This policy shift, effective February 2025, targets small package imports valued under $800 that previously entered the U.S. duty-free, which has significantly benefited Chinese e-commerce platforms like Temu and Shein. Predictions for the future outlook. 1. Increased prices for consumers. As companies like Temu and Shein are forced to adjust to the new tariffs, it is highly likely that these costs will be passed on to American consumers. Economists predict that the previously low prices that attracted consumers to these platforms will rise, leading to potential consumer backlash. The willingness of consumers to pay higher prices for goods that were once perceived as bargains will be a critical factor in the future of these platforms. 2. Shift in e-commerce strategies. In response to the tariffs, e-commerce companies may pivot their business models. Temu has already begun increasing its inventory in U.S. warehouses, which may allow for quicker delivery times and the absorption of some tariff costs. However, this strategy requires significant capital investment and may not fully mitigate the impacts of the tariffs. Shein's expansion of U.S.-based distribution centers reflects a broader trend where Chinese companies might adapt their logistics to maintain competitiveness. 3. Resurgence of domestic retail. With the new tariffs, U.S. brick-and-mortar retailers and domestic e-commerce platforms could see a resurgence as consumers may turn to local alternatives in response to rising prices from Chinese competitors. This shift could revitalize local businesses that struggled against the low-cost imports in previous years. 4. Increased regulatory scrutiny.
The closure of the de minimis loophole is likely to lead to more stringent regulations and scrutiny of imports to ensure compliance with U.S. safety and labor standards. This increased oversight may strain the operations of Chinese e-commerce platforms,
particularly in relation to allegations of unethical labor practices and product safety concerns.
Companies will need to demonstrate compliance to avoid sanctions and maintain their market presence.
5. Impact on supply chains. The tariff changes could disrupt existing supply chain dynamics, pushing companies to re-evaluate their sourcing and distribution strategies. This may encourage some retailers to look for alternative suppliers outside of China, particularly in Southeast Asia or within the Americas, to reduce dependency on Chinese imports that are now subject to tariffs.
6. Consumer behavior changes.
As consumers adjust to the new pricing landscape, there may be a shift in shopping behaviors.
Price-sensitive consumers, particularly in lower income brackets, may seek out more affordable alternatives or prioritize purchases differently.
This could lead to increased interest in second-hand goods, local crafts,
or thrift shopping as consumers seek value.
7. Potential for retaliatory measures.
While the current focus is on U.S. tariffs, it is possible that China could retaliate with its own tariffs on U.S. goods.
Such actions could escalate trade tensions, further impacting a broader spectrum of industries beyond e-commerce, including agriculture and manufacturing.
8. Long-term viability of platforms like Temu and Shein.
The long-term viability of platforms like Temu and Shein will depend on their ability to adapt to new market conditions. If they cannot maintain competitive pricing and consumer interest, they may struggle to sustain their market share. However, if they can successfully reposition themselves by enhancing their value propositions, such as improving product quality, delivery times, and customer service, they may find new opportunities for growth.
9. Innovation in delivery and fulfillment.
As tariffs push companies to rethink their logistics,
we may see increased innovation in delivery and fulfillment methods. Companies might invest in technology and infrastructure to streamline operations, reduce costs, and improve customer satisfaction.
This could include developments in automation, inventory management, and last-mile delivery solutions.
10. Emergence of new competitors.
The disruption caused by tariffs may open the door for new entrants in the e-commerce space. Companies that can quickly adapt to the changing landscape, perhaps by leveraging technologies or unique value propositions, may find opportunities to capture market share from established players.
Conclusion.
The closing of the de minimis loophole and the introduction of tariffs on Chinese imports is poised to reshape the e-commerce environment in the United States dramatically. From rising consumer prices and shifts in shopping behavior to increased regulatory scrutiny and potential supply chain disruptions, the landscape will evolve in response to these changes.
In the coming years,
the adaptability of Chinese e-commerce firms and the resilience of U.S. retailers will be critical determinants of market dynamics, consumer preferences, and overall economic health.